There he goes.
What's happening?
What's happening with you, Adam?
Not much. How are you?
Hey, man, are you back right? I know it takes a minute to get back right. Coming back from where you came back from, are you back right?
And we spent 4 or 5 days in Las Vegas, so
Ooh,
back right now. I'll tell you what, though, and I've never experienced this before. It was 109, 110 degrees every day. So, man, it was nuts.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I went out there last July for my birthday.
Yeah.
That's the hottest, man. It was so hot.
Yeah.
And I've been to Vegas a few times, but never that hot. And it was uncomfortable. I didn't even want to go outside at all, man.
Yeah. And it's funny, before we went out there, people were telling us, oh, don't worry about it. It's like a dry heat. It won't feel like,
oh, man.
I don't care. Dry heat, whatever. It was. 109 feels like 109. It's crazy. I've never experienced that before. So, yeah. But we're back among the living now. So we're good.
Okay. Well, we're about to have some fun tonight. Man. And thank you so much for joining. And you know what? We came in live. I said, Adam knows what he's doing.
That's wrong.
Adam knows what he's doing.
We've done it a few times. All right.
Yeah, we can come in live with Adam. The high school We can't come in live. High school kids, we gotta chill.
Prep those guys a little bit. I got you.
So, man, with that being said, we've got Adam Nelson, founder of hoopdirt.com. But to me, that's a portion of what we're going to talk about tonight, but not everything of what we're going to talk about this evening.
All right.
Because you're bigger than, and obviously Hoop Dirt is fantastic, and we'll obviously get into that. But I really appreciate some of the other facets. So, man, tonight, Adam Nelson, man, what's going on, man?
You know, I just living the dream here, man. Like, you know, first of all, I appreciate the kind words about hoopdirt.com. You know, it's been a passion. I know we'll talk about it more, but you know,
absolutely,
I love that it gives me the opportunity to come on and be here with you tonight and chop it up a little bit. So, man, I was very, very happy to receive your invitation. So I appreciate it.
Well, we're happy that you accepted it. So, with that being said, man, I got to give you kudos.
Okay.
Because when people come on, typically we've got a research group here, and we try to get to the high school, junior. Man, we try to dig.
Yeah.
Man, we couldn't find. I gotta do the Sean Carter Jay-Z tonight. I'm going off the dome, man. We couldn't find too much info. Obviously, we had a lot of Hoop Dirt, but when it comes to Adam Nelson, and I see the Boston Celtics behind you.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? Where did your story start?
Yeah, so I'm a Boston kid. I grew up in Boston. Grew up in the city of Boston.
We're talking Dorchester, or what part of Boston are you from? South or what?
I grew up in the south end of Boston.
Oh, okay. You good with your hands then. So,
you know, so I've really been here my whole life, except for the 2 years I spent in Columbia, South Carolina. So I've lived in Boston, except for, you know, for 2 years of my life where I spent in Columbia.
Now, did you hoop in the Bean?
Yeah, you know, I've been one of those guys that was, you know, just a very average basketball player my whole life, but knew I wanted to kind of be involved and wanted to be involved in coaching, you know.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, like I had a very unique opportunity my first 2 years in college to head down to Columbia, you know, as an 18-year-old kid and be involved with the basketball program as a student at the University of South Carolina, and was able to see some amazing things there in my 2 years. And, you know, I spent 2 years there and then transferred back up here and finished at Boston College, you know, with the basketball program up here, and kind of started my coaching career. And I spent 20 years coaching college basketball and then figured this whole thing out.
So with that being said, as you were growing up in the Bean in Boston, and man, shout out to Martha's Vineyard, man. I love going up there and taking that ferry up to Martha's Vineyard. That's a conversation for a different day. As you were growing up in Boston,
yep,
what drew you? And before we actually get to what drew you to USC, what were your goals? And I assume you played in high school.
Yeah.
What were kind of your goals? And actually, who were some of the good players that you might have played against, you know, during that? I know we got a good friend of mine went to Boston Latin. So, you know, there are a lot of great high schools up in Boston. So who were some of the great
well, I'll tell you what, it's not the guys that were a little bit before me in high school, the guys that I grew up watching were Patrick Ewing and Ramil Robinson. You know,
those guys,
those are the guys. Cambridge Ridge and Latin guys.
Cambridge, yeah.
The coach,
Mike Jarvis era, the Mike Jarvis era.
That was like, you know, that was, you know, legitimate high school basketball in Boston. And it's funny, I actually had this conversation with somebody today. You know, basketball in the Boston area in the 80s and 90s was so good in Boston, but now it's so much different because of all the prep schools in New England. You know, like if you're a good player in this area, you're going prep. You're going up to New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont. You're not hanging out, you know, in the city of Boston. It's just it's become so different, and not just Boston, all the outlying suburbs. Yeah. So that's really changed the game, you know. So that was kind of, you know, those are the guys that I watched growing up, and you know, like I said, I had a unique opportunity after high school. I said, for whatever reason, I wanted to be a college basketball coach. No idea why. You know, you go back and ask the 17, 18-year-old self. I don't know why, but you know, I chased that dream.
So you went to USC, University of South Carolina, right out of high school. Yeah. So what drew you down to Columbia? And shout out to Rentham, Massachusetts, the great place to get Timberlands if you ever in that area. The outlets. So and obviously I gotta say shout out to Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun. I spent more time than I should have in both of those places. So what drew you down to Columbia?
I had some connections with the staff, the current staff that was there at the time. So Steve Newton was the head coach. Yeah, James Holland, Craig Morris, Brian Lane were assistants, really good staff. And that was back in the old days where you had, 2 full-timers and a restricted earnings coach. So young guys like me who wanted to get into coaching would come down as a student, and we did everything. I did everything. As an 18-year-old kid, I'm in the SEC, literally, recruit visits, recruit mailings, on the court, practicing, literally doing it all as an 18-year-old kid. And to me, someone who wanted to be involved in college basketball, it was a great, introduction to big time college basketball. And like I said, I started at the University of South Carolina when I was 18. I'm 50.
So you had some hustle. You had some hustle in you.
Yeah, I still do.
Well, you know what? I know you have it now, but as an 18-year-old, especially coming from, the Northeast, typically that's just kind of is what it is. Yeah. So you definitely had some hustle in you. And was that Eddie Fogler? Was Eddie Fogler the head coach at that time? And who were some of the players on the team?
Yeah, it was crazy. So again, this is why I love college basketball, right? And this is, like I said, I got into this at 18. I'm 51. This has been my whole life, right? I got this introduction at 18. So my first year, Steve Newton was the head coach. Got fired right after. So I was a part of this whole thing when Bobby Cremins got hired. Bobby Cremins was here for 5 days. He was the head coach for 5 days. Came from Georgia Tech, was a USC alum. This big whole, this press conference was this big rah welcome home Bobby thing. And 5 days later, I walked into the office, and our administrative assistant looked at me. She said, "Bobby's gone." I was like, "Bobby died? What happened?" She's like, "No, Bobby's gone. His wife picked him up, and they went back to Georgia Tech. He's gone." So it was just this crazy period. Hired Eddie Fogler right after that, so I got to work for Coach Fogler for a year. He was coming from Vanderbilt, where he was the national coach of the year. It was an unbelievable experience. And if I was a little tougher, I probably would have stuck it out. But he was hard to work for, man. I learned so much. Yeah, I learned so much in a year.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. When he first got, those are some pretty, if my memory serves me correctly, and shout out to my man Melvin Hartree. Most people don't even remember Melvin Hartree. We call him Money, but he was down there during that time. But if my memory serves me correctly, those are some pretty tough years. His first years down at USC. Yeah. So what did you remember?
Yeah, I was there for year one, and he really he pretty much replaced the whole roster from my first year. And that's kind of before that became trendy. Now, everybody does that. We had good guys. We had Jamie Watson, Emmett Hall, the captain, Carrie Rich was with us.
Yeah.
Andy Bostic, Donnie Matthews.
But the SEC was tough too. The SEC.
We'd go to Kentucky, some of those teams, man, Jamal Mashburn, Travis Ford, Mel Martinez, nasty. It was crazy. I remember going to Arkansas with Corliss Williamson. Crazy stuff. So again, to be able to see, big time college basketball as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, and I really did. I loved my time down there. But it was, you said the Northeast is a little different. I was down there for 2 years, and it was as a 19-year-old kid working for Eddie Fogler. It wasn't easy. If I was there, I wish I was a little tougher. I would have stuck it out. But
well. With that being said, and I hope I've got my time right. So you transfer back up to BC, right?
Yep.
Chestnut Hill. And was that the time? Actually, Chris Herron was a little bit after you.
No, Chris was my first year. My first year at Boston College. Chris was a freshman, so I was on the bench.
Okay.
When he hurt his wrist to put him out for the season against Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Okay. So what was it like going back home?
It was nice. It was good for me. It was good. It was refreshing. Different. That's when we were in the old Big East too. The Big East was different back then. It was a good staff, and I had made some connections with that staff a long time ago. Jim O'Brien was the head coach. Rick Boyages, Paul Biancardi was one of the assistants, and Coach Biancardi and I are lifelong friends. So we had a good staff. I had a great 2 years there. Year one, we weren't great. Year two, we made the NCAA tournament. We beat Indiana, lost to Georgia Tech. So really, really unbelievable experience.
So I got to ask you a question because you're on Lost Land. We're going to ask you tough questions.
Yes, sir.
How many points did you average in high school?
Oh, not many. I couldn't even tell you. Less than 10.
Okay. How were you able to get these opportunities? You must have had a really strong entrepreneurial game on you to be able to talk yourself into these opportunities.
Yeah. I can hustle a little bit, but also, I can shoot the ball a little bit, and I got a little better as I went. So I was on the court a lot at practice.
Well, the reason I ask is that not necessarily about how good of a player you were, but to me it speaks volumes, especially at that time. Most of the times, those types of positions, either you were a former player or you just really had a really strong hustle with you. So, man, obviously you had a strong hustle with you.
But you know what? But like I said earlier, though, it was so much different back then, because now if you look at a staff in the SEC, you've got 11, 12 guys plus all the graduate assistants, then all the like a student staff of 8 to 10.
Yeah.
It was literally like I said, 2 full-time coaches, a restricted earnings coach, and a couple students.
Restricted earnings.
Yeah. After I graduated, when I went to Holy Cross, I had one of those jobs. But it's crazy. So that's why it was a little bit easier to get in back then, if you really wanted to get your hands dirty and do everything. But yeah, you had to hustle and you had to grind.
So at that time, was coaching was that your goal? Were you trying to get on that trajectory in terms of, obviously you've been with Eddie Fogler, and who was the coach? Who's the head coach at BC at that time?
Jim O'Brien, who later went on to Ohio State.
Oh my goodness. And he was with the Celtics.
No, it's a different Jim O'Brien. There's 2 of them. That's the Jim O'Brien. Kentucky.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So how did the Holy Cross thing happen for you?
So after I left BC, and actually my first job right after BC, I took a Division III assistant job at a small college here, Curry College in Milton, Mass. But Pat Skerry, who's now the head coach at Towson, so Pat was the head coach. I was his assistant. Pat was 24. I was 22. And for 2 years, we ran all around New England recruiting anybody and everybody. If you were breathing and could dribble and shoot a little bit, we recruited. It was fun. So what we did there, and again, that kind of, cut my teeth in the coaching world. And Pat was, and Pat's still one of my very, very good friends. He's done a really good job at Towson. They've had a couple really good years here. But he really taught me how to recruit. Like you said, I could hustle, I could play the game, I could coach a little bit, but Pat taught me how to recruit. Like, we're this little tiny school in Milton, Mass. And, we were out literally every night recruiting somebody. If we weren't out, we were on the phones. I mean, we hustled, we grinded for 2 years. It was nuts.
And I got to stop you, Adam. One thing I've got to do, man. My first recruiting letter ever was from Assumption College in Massachusetts. I was ready to sign. I was so happy. I was ready to sign with them on the dotted line that day.
Yeah.
So how did Holy Cross happen for you?
So after our second year at Curry, we were pretty good, had a good year. So Pat left, became an assistant at Northeastern, and I got lucky and happened to land an assistant's job at Holy Cross right about the same time. So, I was 24 years old, Division I assistant in the Patriot League, and, life was good and had a nice.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was,
it
was good. I had a good run. We weren't very good. We did get fired. We spent a year there, got fired, but then I was able to kind of join back up with Pat, and I joined the staff at Northeastern.
Right in Boston.
Exactly.
Right in Boston.
I'm a Boston. I've lived in Boston, like I said, my whole life. So I was commuting out to Worcester, and it was a grind. So we got fired, and everyone gets fired. That happens. But I was very lucky that, I had worked for Pat for 2 years at Curry, and now he was an assistant at Northeastern, and they happened to have a spot there. So I left Holy Cross, not by our own, will, but we got fired at Holy Cross, and I was able to land at Northeastern and spend some time there with Pat, and unbelievable experience there. Great staff. Our staff back then, so Pat Skerry, who's now the head coach at Towson, Jay Young was on staff, who was the head coach at Fairfield. My man CY Charlton Young, who's now at Miami. He's been at Mizzou staff. So really, really like legit.
At Northeastern?
CY was up there with us for a year.
Wow. Now, I've always wondered this. And you be, again, Adam Nelson with hoopdirt.com. And since you were so young at that time, I'm probably it's a little different because you can move around. You know, you can go from here to here.
Yeah.
What's it like to be an assistant coach and have so much volatility? And you know, every year could be different. What's that mentality like, or what kind of mentality do you have to be able to survive?
You know, it's funny. It's a great question. And I remember when I like graduated from Boston College and got my first coaching job, you know, Paul Biancardi pulled me aside because he was with his BC, good friends, and he said, "Are you sure you want to do this? And if you do this, you cannot have a family. Like you can't do this." Like, yeah, we'll be fine.
It's like owning a nightclub. No,
and you know me, dumb young kid. I'm like, Coach B, he done. No, we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Right.
So to be quite honest, like I was lucky. My first, you know, 5, 8, 10 years in this business, you know, didn't have a family, didn't have kids, bounced around a bunch, no problem. But then, and this is what I talk to a lot of young coaches about, you know, then I got a little bit older. I became a Division III head coach, was a Division III head coach for 15 years, started having a family. And then it just becomes like,
it's tough.
You can't.
You got to make decisions. You got to make real tough decisions.
And it becomes a challenge. So as a young guy, man, shoot, embrace it, love it, chase it. Absolutely. But you know, there becomes a time where you got to reel it in a little bit.
And with that being said, and obviously I've been a coach, so I don't know. I've been around coaches. It's tough because at some point, you know, you're not the young coach anymore. You know, you're not Adam Nelson when he's 20, you know, 22, 23.
Yeah.
You know, that was 10, 12 years ago. And there are other young, hot coaches.
Yeah.
So what is it like? Maybe not for you. Maybe you didn't run into this, but what is it like as that? And it goes with any profession, you know, not just coaching, just any corporate, you know, anything, finance. When, you know, you're not that young, you know, you're not that young person anymore. And you have to really kind of make some decisions in terms of, you know, what your career path is. You know, what is that kind of like?
Yeah, it's hard. And to be honest, that's kind of what I went through. And that's why I stopped coaching. You know, my last 10 years, 2005 to 2015, I was the head coach at Suffolk University, right in downtown Boston. Great job. Loved it. But, you know, I started having a family. So I wasn't, you know, that young guy anymore that could run around. So I had young assistants who would run around, young assistants who were relatable to the players. And it just became, you know, harder and harder to kind of manage everything, even as a head coach, you know, and to me, you know, and I ran into a couple issues, right? So I became a head coach at the Division III level, had a family, but halfway through my tenure, I realized, like, man, I got into coaching college basketball. And this is no disrespect. I love the Division III level, right? Coached there for 15 years, but the Division I level is so much different. You know, like
it's tough. It's tough when you start out USC and BC.
Right. So I had two things. Like, you know, I'm kind of stuck at this Division III level, which I don't really love. You know, and I'm having a family. You know, so it's really hard to do both. So I kind of had to figure it out. And you know, especially like when my oldest son started playing high school basketball. Like, so I'm going to be on the road recruiting somebody else's kids Tuesday and Friday nights, but my kids are going to be playing Tuesday and Friday night. Like, right. You know, what are we doing? And to be honest, that was right about the same time where we started Hoop Dirt. So it was like, okay, we might have an out here. And so it kind of like this natural progression. It just kind of worked.
So I see Suffolk, but after Northeastern, you ended up did you do some time at Newberry?
So I did. There's two. So Newberry's up here. It was a Division III school up here. In South Carolina. Yeah. So So I left Northeastern at 26 years old. Became the head coach at Becker College, small Division III school in Worcester. You know, used my Worcester connections for my Holy Cross time. Spent 3 years at Becker. Loved my time there. It was a great little school. And then had an opportunity. Again, was commuting from Boston to Worcester. You know, and then Newberry is in Brookline, which is right outside of Boston. So I had the opportunity to come back to Brookline, coach for 2 years at Newberry as the head coach. And then, you know, got the job at Suffolk, which was a great job. Unbelievable job right in Beacon Hill, downtown Boston. We recruited great kids. We had great kids. We brought in guys that were rookie of the year. We had some really good years and spent that last 10 years at Suffolk. So I spent 15 years as a Division III head coach.
Now, what is the difference in the mentality from a D3 coach to a D2 coach to a mid-level D1 coach? What's the difference?
Man, it's a lot. There's a lot of difference. I mean, I think the first, as a Division III head coach, you do everything. Literally do everything. I was a head coach for 15 years, never had a full-time assistant. You know, so you're doing everything. from driving vans to, I mean, you name it. You have your hand in every facet of the program. Where when you're at the Division I level, um, you have a lot more help. Even at the Division II level, every Division II school up here in New England has a full-time assistant, plus a graduate assistant. So you have a lot more help. And especially like nowadays, where like I said, these Division I staffs are like 12, 30, you got one guy doing social media, you got one guy doing roster management. Like it's so much different now. But like, and that's what I tell a lot of young guys too. Like if you're looking to really like cut your teeth in the business, take a Division III assistant job. Go ahead, man, because you're going to learn everything. So it's a lot.
How much does and thank you for your candor on that. How much does, as you get older, the money start playing a part? Like when you're 22, man, you can take 30 or 40,000, and you could feel like, man, I'm rich. How much, as you get older, does the money start really becoming an issue?
That's it. It's a huge factor. And again, this is the stuff, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but this is what I talk to young guys about all the time. Young guys that want to chase the dream. And I say, all the time, like at some point you're going to want a family. At some point you're actually going to want to retire. And there's some jobs. I know guys that are, a little bit older than me that are still chasing, $25,000 part-time assistant jobs. Like what are we doing? Like at some point you got to figure out like your life. And that's, so listen, so when I was a young guy, right, my first job, like I said, at Curry with Pat Scarry, I got paid $0 for basketball. I was the assistant sports information director and the assistant lacrosse coach. Never did anything with lacrosse in my life. No idea. But it got me $3,000. I got paid $3,000 for the year. My next year with Pat, I got paid for basketball too. Another $1,500. Had those other jobs. I got paid $4,500 for the year. That's all I did. I substitute taught a little bit. I was fortunate. My wife now was my girlfriend at the time. She was working in the advertising world. She supported us, right? So I was lucky to be able to get in and do some of those jobs. Yeah. And then you kind of move up. But then even as the head coach, at Suffolk, like Division III head job, like it's living in Boston with 4 kids. It's still not.
Wow.
It's hard. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do.
And with that being said, and we're going to get to Hoop Dirt in a second, but with that being said, and we had a coach on the other Tuesday night, man. He said something that was so profound, which is important regardless. But he said, man, your spouse is really important.
Yeah.
When it comes to if you're coaching at a D2, D3 level, and probably a D1 level too, but your spouse is important regardless. But I was just saying, when you're coaching, because of just the volatility, and it takes a certain person, everybody doesn't understand how volatile and how the demands of coaching. So it just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's hard, and you do have to have a good spouse. And like I said, I'm very fortunate. So I met my wife. We've been together over 30 years now. I met her when I was at Boston College, so she knew me when I was a student. Working at Boston College. Like that's all she ever knew. That's all she never knew I did. She was at all of our games. My junior and senior year, literally every game. Came on the road with us sometimes. So that's what she knew. Even so, when I was an assistant at Holy Cross, one of the coolest things, we actually had a JV team. And it was a great way for us to recruit the New England prep schools. Like on Sundays, the New England prep schools, our JV team, they'd smack us, but it was a way we'd get, 12 prep kids on campus, feed them a meal, play a game, and move on. But during those times, Sundays, she would come to campus with me. She would do the book for our JV games, so like she kind of came up in this thing too. But I'll tell you what, even now, kind of being done with coaching, Hoop Dirt's a grind, man. Like it's a 24/7, never ending. We go on family vacations a lot. That's our thing, right? We've been, in different countries where I have to say, hey, I need a couple hours. I got to work. No problem. Like she's got it. No problem. She understands that like there's stuff like this news cycle doesn't stop. And there's times, we've been on the beach in Florida when the kids were little, and I'll sit at the little tiki bar and just work for hours. But, and she's understanding because she's kind of lived this with me, and she's seen, the coaching side of it, and then seen this other thing grow. So could not do it.
Man. My dad told me a long time ago, he said, either your wife is going to bring you up or bring you down.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground. So he said, choose ye wisely. So obviously, either you've got lucky or you just chose wisely.
I got lucky. I got very lucky. I know I got very lucky. I appreciate that every day.
So with that being said, as you're coaching at Suffolk,
yeah,
and you said like you're 15 years in at that point.
Yeah.
When did your mindset change in terms of saying maybe I need to transition, and how did the idea of Hoop Dirt come around?
So we really started Hoop Dirt probably, when I had probably 2 or 3 years left at Suffolk. So I was doing it while I was there. My last 2 or 3
You're
years.
smart.
It started to grow, and that was kind of when it really kind of took off, like 2011, 12, somewhere in there. Maybe a little later, 14, 15. Like that was like, oh, you know what? We can get out and maybe be able to do this and be okay. It came about by, we mentioned it earlier in the show, like the 18, 19-year-old kid, I used to hustle, right? Well, that's like, it was a hustle. Like I became the guy that knew guys, right? So I would always know like what was going on, like and that's the old day, right? The old days before, we had email was there and the internet was there, but guys actually called each other on the phone. Right. So I was on the phone all day with coaches like, hey, what's going on? And you kind of become known as that guy. So I remember, my assistant said to me one day, actually, it's a long story, but it was over a game of poker. And he said, hey, coach, you got all this information. All you do is talk to these guys. He's like, what if we start a website and you put the stuff out there? I was like, I don't know. And, my brother-in-law was a web developer at the time. And we kind of talked to him and he just kind of created this 1-page. Remember when Hoop Dirt started? It's just 1-page blog.
Weekly. Yeah.
Kind of did it a little bit slowly. And then remember we'd always look at our analytics. And like one day we got like 100 hits and we're like, whoa, friggin' 100 people just like read this stuff. That's crazy. And then it was like 1,000. And then it was like 10,000. And now we're getting, monthly, in the millions, 3-4 million per month. It's crazy. And, the social media with, 40, 50, 60 million a year, like it's kind of taken off a little bit.
I tell you what, man, men lie, women lie, numbers do not lie.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, the way I just happen to be stumbling, because I'm naturally inquisitive. I happen to be stumbling across, and I stumbled across you guys.
Yeah.
And I said, man, they do what we do. But the other thing I said is, but they do it a lot better. I was like, man, these guys are fantastic.
I appreciate it.
And man, I gotta give you your kudos, because the one thing I love a lot of things about the site, but one of the things I love is what it reminds me of is everybody likes Sports Illustrated. We grew up in the Sports Illustrated age.
Of course we did.
But Slam magazine was different. And you know what it reminds? It reminds me of not Slam, but that slant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That slant, the more relatable slant, as opposed to an ESPN, just like, and you get into the grassroots, D3, D2, NAI, because you understand that there are more people probably wanting to see that information than want to see what's going on in Kentucky and Arkansas, because ESPN is doing that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
and to be honest, I think that's kind of where we made our bones a little bit. Where, I'm not a journalist. I didn't go to school for journalism. I'm not one of these ESPN guys who writes properly and knows what to do. I'm a coach. I came up in this world. Like I came up in this basketball world. This is all I've done. Like, so I relate to coaches and I write like, I don't know. I know what they're going through, so we're very careful to protect them. If guys don't want stuff up, I won't put it up. There's so much information trading behind the scenes. There's a lot of stuff I don't put up, but I'll trade for a favor later. So I think really, I respect what they do. I've been there. I lived that life and good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, I feel the stuff I put up there reflects that, but it's also, there's a lot of guys out there now that try to do this, especially on social media, that tweet all kinds of stuff. Hey, that's no problem. That's cool. But like, these are my people. These are my guys. So like we broke a little bit of a story. Really good Division III job opened up here this week, Wheaton College, was able to break it. But, the guy at Wheaton, Brian Walmsley, who just stepped aside, well, I've known him for 25 plus years. You know, I was going kind of doing my research to put that article up that he's stepping away. And his best season, he went 21-9, won an ECAC championship. Well, I was the head coach at Newberry at the time, and we beat him that year. You know, so like those are things like, so it's not just like, oh, I'm writing about some random guy. It's like, you know, all these guys I know, you know, or I've learned to know, you know, so it's like, this is my world. These are my people. This is what I do.
And you talk about your relationships. Yeah. One question, and obviously you're Northeastern based, I would say, just based on your initially based on your history. Yep. But you're not just you're definitely the whole United States and probably outside of the United States. How have you been able to scale? Is it just been through the relationships and it's grown organically, or how have you been able to scale the brand?
It just grows. You know, started out kind of with the people I know and the people I came up in this business with. And like I said, I came up with some great people. And then it kind of grows organically. You know, and I think the one thing that's really been important to me, like I said, you know, I respect what guys do in this business. I respect coaches because I've been there, done that. And guys know that I want to do stuff the right way. So like anything I put up, it's not just like some random rumor that I heard. 99.9% of it, I've already confirmed with the person that I'm writing about, you know, and I'll be able to reach out to guys, whether I know them or not. I can reach out to anybody. I'll have their information. So, and that's another, you know, way. There's guys even this week that I reached out to for the first time ever trying to confirm stuff. And then, you know, cool, you want it up, you don't want it up, well, problem. But you know what? There we go. We just formed a relationship, and then we'll start getting stuff. And you know,
you're a made man. You're a made man now.
But yeah, it's just about that relationship building.
And obviously, you've got and I'm going to put Paul Biancardi, who's the godfather on the high school scene right now. So you've got that as a relationship, and I'm sure you use. But with that being said, and you know this for a fact, how much would you say, obviously the D2 coaches and the D3 coaches, man, how much do you actually understand? Oh, I know you understand it, but talk a little bit about how much they appreciate getting a job. And I know everybody appreciates getting a job, but I'm sure you can feel it with certain people, probably more than others. And even me, like, I'm not even in that world, but I understand, like, when a cat is looking for an opportunity and he or she gets that opportunity, man, they are so appreciative. And, you know, just talk a little bit, some stories that you've had where you've kind of got that appreciation, because I'm sure you help a lot of people behind the scenes.
Yeah, I do. And it's really hard to get a job in this business. It is. No, and I do. And I try to help a lot of guys out as much as I can. And it's just nice to, you know, when someone gets something that either I was able to help them with or something from the website help them with, you know, like a lot of guys will reach out to me and say, hey, I got this job because I saw it on Hoop Dirt, so thank you. I don't know you, but thank you because I saw the job posting, because, you know, we post jobs and we post them at all levels. There's probably a half a dozen Division I coaches right now, Division I head coaches that I've helped along the way that are very appreciative because maybe we've cleaned some stuff up in their past, you know. So, you know, it's nice to feel appreciated. It's not why we do it, but it's nice to kind of feel that. It's nice when you hear, you know, thank you. But it's a cool process to see.
How much has the game changed in the last, I'm gonna just say 5 years with NIL? The conferences are a lot different than kind of when we grew up. You know, you're talking about the old Big East before. And I think it's actually to your benefit for hoopdirt.com because volatility, it's like the stock market. Volatility for a person like you, transactions, is fantastic. But how much has the game changed? Through your lens in the last 5 years with all the changes.
It's nuts. I mean, it's a totally different game than when I was coaching, you know, especially at the Division I level. I mean, you know, the NIL stuff is, and I know they're trying to regulate it now with like the SCORE Act and all the other stuff they're doing, but there's no guardrails right now. I mean, it is, you know, open free agency. It's nuts. And obviously the thing that makes it not worse. I don't want to say worse, because I'm not one of those old guys who thinks like, oh, it's crap. I actually think players should be compensated. I think there needs to be more rules, but I think players should be compensated. But I think the thing that really kind of cranks up to the next level is the transfer portal, where, you know, back in the old days, you know, you transfer someone, you had to sit a year. before you transfer, before you could play. Now you're gone, man. And so, you're not happy with your playing time. You're not happy with your compensation. The transfer portal, it's free agency, and it's crazy. And it puts so much pressure on coaches. It puts pressure. I know a lot of coaches right now who actively, recruit their current rosters to make sure they're coming back.
You got to. You're always recruiting.
But then if you look at all the staffs now, like I said, with the number of guys on staff, but now everybody's hiring general managers, the general managers to manage the NIL stuff, assistant general managers who are managing the portal and player relations. Like it's a professional organization, at the high major level, it's a professional organization. And I think the biggest impact on all of this is the NCAA tournament. I think the days of a Cinderella are gone, because some of those small schools. I mean, look back in the days when, like, Shaka took VCU and Jim Larranaga took George Mason on these runs. Like, those schools can't compete financially now with the big boys who are actually paying these guys. It's not about going to find like hidden talent who can compete. Like, those top 20, 30 schools. I mean, look at the Sweet 16 this year. It was all, Power 4, Power 5 conference teams. I think that's where it's really changes, unless something drastic happens. And I think it will. I think it'll get reeled in eventually, but you're not going to see a Cinderella for a long time here.
Well, with that being said, and again, we have Adam Nelson with hoopdirt.com on with us tonight. With that being said, we're class of 92, so I'm pretty sure we're the same, about the same age.
Yeah.
With that being said, the old Big East where you had Chris Mullin, Patrick Ewing, Ronnie Cycli, Pearl Washington,
Eric Coleman, Sherman Douglas.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Billy Owens, all those guys. Those guys, Wendell Alexis. Wendell Alexis. Those guys, and obviously Billy Donovan back in his Providence days.
Yeah.
And Dana Barros. Got to make sure we get a Dana Barros with BC.
There we go.
So those guys were stars actually in college.
Yeah.
Those guys were stars in college.
Yep.
Do you? And the game has changed. Society has changed so much now, and even college basketball has changed a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think college basketball will ever get back to that level. What do you think might need to happen for it to get back to a level where you have the casual fan paying attention more in January, February, and December, and not just March? What do you think that needs to happen, or do you think it can happen?
It's a good question. I don't know if it can happen, because I think it's really about what you just said, right? So back in the old days, and I say the old days, the 80s and 90s, man, I sound like an old guy now. Right?
That is the old days.
but as a fan base, you'd have a guy come in as a freshman, and you'd watch him, and you'd be attached to, like, wow, again, like, take a look at a guy like Dana Barros from BC. You watched him for 4 years. All the guys just said, Syracuse, you said Ronnie Cycli, these guys you watch play, so you build a connection with the program. Now, how many of these teams get rid of 3/4 of their roster every year, whether it's through the transfer portal or whatever. So you're not building those relationships. You're building, maybe a relationship with a one season team and hoping that's going to be, you catch lightning in a bottle and be pretty good, instead of like following a program. You're not. It's a lot different. And I think that's kind of where college basketball has lost its luster a little bit, where you just kind of, even, and it's not a great example, but like a Cooper Flag at Duke, like those are just 1 year guys. Like they just bring in 1 year guys. And Duke's a bad example because everyone's going to still follow Duke. But, some of these other programs, BC, St. John's, even Pitt in the old days with like Jerome Lane and those guys, like, you followed those programs. Then now they just become, again, like free agency. They're like NBA teams that flip their rosters every year.
Well,
it's a different.
I think actually the coaches probably need to be the stars as opposed to the players, because there's going to be more consistency with the coaches. But with that being said, do you think college basketball needs, and I don't even know how you would do this, but like a commissioner, someone with probably a business background, probably a legal background too would probably help. Do you think that would be something that would be advantageous to the sport?
Yeah, I think they need something. And who knows, what if, a group of, 30 SEC and ACC teams just break off and break away from the NCAA and start their own thing with a committee, like who knows? Like that's something that actually could happen. But they do need something. They need something to reel it in. Like I said, there's just too much. There's too much happened too fast. With the NIL stuff, with the portal, and there's no regulations, and they're starting to try to introduce them, but it's almost too late. So stuff has to kind of get reeled in here.
I agree with you. I think the NIL and portal were great, but because they came at the same time, it would almost be great if they would have did like a scattered approach, maybe NIL 1 year, maybe a portal 2 years later. But when you introduce them at the same time, along with so many societal changes at the same time, I think it just takes a while. But I also think that Jay Bilas would probably be a really good person as I don't even know how that would work, but I think that he has a passion for it, obviously, and I know he has a legal background. I'm not sure of his business background, but with that being said, 2 more questions. I'm gonna get you out of here. D2, I think D2 is a great spot right now. I think because they've definitely has more, at least in my opinion, they have more resources than they have had historically. You can get a great education, and really, to me, D2 for a high school kid is like post grad. You can go to D if you're really serious about hooping and maybe getting to where you think you need to be. Talk a little bit about D2.
Well, so it's I think D2 literally because of what you just said is a challenge, because you're going to get guys who think they should be Division I players. You know what? Well, I'm going to go to this D2 school for a year, and I'm going to be pretty good. And then,
the coach has to deal with that.
Exactly, right. So I think D2 it's a good level because you can get a scholarship and play pretty good basketball. To be honest, in my personal opinion, I think within 10 years D2 could be gone. If you look at the amount of Division II schools who have moved up to Division I in the last 5 or 6 years. Even up here, Stonehill, Mercyhurst, all those schools that are now Division I. And then a bunch of them have moved down to Division III. I think in like 10 years, you're going to have like the scholarship schools, Division I, and then the
haves and the have-nots.
Exactly right.
That's how society might be too. But keep going.
But the Division IIIs, all the Division IIIs, they build themselves as academic schools because they don't have scholarships, and that's fine. But I think Division II is dwindling, and especially a lot of the small private schools without big endowments are going out of business. I mean, it's, every year, 5, 8, 10 new schools are shutting their doors. That's really going to start hitting the twos, especially, if you're in financial trouble and you're funding scholarships, that's a problem. And that's why, it's going to be, I think, messy at that level a little bit. There's an enrollment cliff coming where there's not going to be as many college age kids in the next 2 or 3 years, especially up here in the Northeast. And that's going to have a huge effect on some of the twos up here. So it's a good level for now, but my gut is in 10 years, it may not be here.
When I guess now you guys have been doing it for so long now, but when did it kind of first click to you? Because I'm sure your phone is like Adam Schefter, man. I'm sure you get so many texts and phone calls. When did it kind of click for you? It's like, man, I'm in the game. I'm really in the game. Or was there an article, or when did you really start feeling really good about hoopdirt.com? I'm sure it was when it was financially sustainable for you and your family.
Good. That helped. You know what it was though? So my first, 3 or 4 years doing it, people didn't know it was me. I just went by like the Dirt King. No one knew it was me because I was still coaching, right? And I don't want to coach and do that and have people know I was doing. So I was like this anonymous guy, like these random Twitter guys now. I just, anonymous. But then after I stopped coaching, people kind of found out it was me, and I became more public. And then I think that was when people would start kind of texting me and calling me like, oh, it's you. Oh, damn. Well, like it was kind of that moment, the moment of realization. And to be honest, we kind of had this debate of, should I always just be the Dirt King and no one ever know who I was? And
anonymous.
Right. And some people are like, you got to do that, man, because people are going to know it's you. And they'll be like, what, this clown is doing this? Like, who cares about this clown? He's a nobody. But I will tell you what, it's the best thing that I ever did, because now people know me and can trust me. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's built like, oh, I'm not calling the Dirt King. I'm texting Adam, and Adam will take care of it. Like, hey, and I got guys all the time that'll text me and say, hey, this is coming down the road. Like, please, can you hold on this for a little bit? And like I said, that's my biggest thing, right? Like, I know when especially a Division 2-3 coach is leaving, whether they're getting another job or getting fired, I will always reach out first and say, hey, have you told your team yet? And can I run with it? And guys be like, oh my God, please, can you hold it for 24 hours? And I'll be 100%, brother. I got you. Don't worry about it. Let me know when I can run with it. And that's my biggest thing. Now people know it's me. Like, I got him. And you know what? And like I said, there's a lot of random Twitter guys. Sometimes someone will break something that I'm holding. Go ahead, man. That's you. You can do that. I don't care. Like, I got this guy. I got his back. And like I said, I live that life. That's more important to me is kind of building up that trust in those relationships.
And speaking of one of the random Twitter guys, with that being said, obviously you guys are big domestically. Yeah. And I don't even know if I was listening to, Nick Khan is.
Don't know him.
He's like the CEO of WWE.
Okay. Yeah.
He's with what's McMahon, Vince McMahon. And
Man.
they just did the big deal with ESPN, or did a big deal with Paramount. I can't remember. But he was saying that they always think international.
Yeah.
And to me, Dirt King and basketball, obviously, college basketball is big in domestically, but there is a whole international piece. Yeah. Is that something that you guys have got your eyes on? Because that's a whole, that's a whole different umbrella. Obviously, it's more work as well, but that's a whole different umbrella. Is that something that you guys have had your eyes on?
It's something that we discuss. I think it's a little bit of a challenging market for us to get into for a lot of reasons. Not something that's off the table. We've kind of discussed a lot of growth opportunities. Okay. We're kind of leaking towards them, slowly. Okay.
Lost Letterman to go international then.
Yeah, there you go. But honestly,
and then we'll come back domestic.
Yeah, like again, some of the stuff we talk about is so kind of specific. We just have to find a way to kind of make it meaningful somewhere else. And that's the thing. Like, even in the real world, like if I meet someone who doesn't know anything about basketball, they don't understand this at all. But even like, going to Vegas, I'm walking down the aisle on the plane and a guy literally grabs my leg and says, yo, I was on your site 6 times today. I was like, hey, thank you. Like,
and I know that, and I don't want to speak for you. You correct me if I'm wrong. And I know it's fantastic. You're able to provide for your family. And I know you have other people who are working with you. It's not just you. But I think that you probably get a real satisfaction simply out of the fact that you help a lot of coaches, and you were once one of those coaches. Yeah. So you understand how appreciative, even if they don't always say it, you understand how appreciative they are for what you've built. I understand it better than most. You built that on your own, man. So that says a lot. So just talk about that feeling of how much you kind of appreciate the fact that you've been able to build it yourself, with obviously the help from other people, and help other people along the way.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So I think, so with what I do now, I do a lot of podcasts. I actually do a lot of radio. I do a lot of things, but some of my favorite things that I'm able to do is I'll go on some things, like I'll work with the rising coaches and be able to talk to young coaches and be able to kind of talk to them about, where I've been and where they are, and kind of, give some advice. And like I said, you don't always have to listen to my advice. That's fine. I've done some, like, you can listen or not, but I like the ability to have a platform where I can talk to young coaches and try to see if I can help in any way. So that's what I like. And like you said, I've kind of been there, done that. I've been able to, coach. I've been able to build a business. So if anyone wants to listen to my advice, I'm happy to give it to them. They don't have to take it, but I'm happy to give it to them. So that's why, I come and I do a lot of these podcasts. I do a lot of things. And to me, I get more excited sometimes to know that I'm going to be in front of a group of, 50 coaches, just kind of at a round table talking about basketball and life and advice, and that stuff's cool. And don't get me wrong, listen, when I can do a radio show in March and April and talking about coaching changes, obviously I get jacked up for that and I love it. But it's different, to have the ability to be able to do that, and I really appreciate that. I really mean this when I say this. Like, and we've talked about this all night. I got into this game when I was 18. I'm 51 years old now. This is my whole life. This is what I've done as college basketball my whole life. So I feel
you love it.
I do. I love it. I feel like I can help people. I know stuff. I can protect people. I cannot protect people if you're not nice. So there's a lot that that I feel like this is my game, and I love it. I love being a part of it, and anything I can do to help or whatever. That's what I'm here to do.
Last question for you, Adam.
All right. Oh, this seems serious. I don't know.
This is more of a business question, actually.
Oh, boy.
How much do you think coaches nowadays, as opposed to 10 years ago, have to look at the business aspect of coaching and not necessarily the X and O's? Yeah. And when I say that is you have to look at, when I'm interviewing, at least for me, if I was interviewing with athletic director, I would be talking about the X and O's would probably be second or third. The first thing I would think about was, the brand and what excitement I'm going to bring to the university and how I'm going to be able to help the bottom line and the top line, both lines, both lines. And how much do you think sometimes with coaches that's a disconnect and they just want those X's and O's? And you probably know this. Yeah. The X's and O's from coaches are really, it's probably not that big of a mark. It's typically about the talent, the talent on the floor. So how much do you think it's kind of changed within the last 10 years in terms of being a coach is more than just X's and O's?
Yes. You know what? So being a coach, and especially at that Division I level, you're a CEO. You're not a coach. Right. What you're doing basketball wise is such a small part of your job. And I can't tell you, honestly, in the last 2 or 3 years, how many former NBA players have reached out to me when like small college jobs open up, and they'll say, hey, if I go with this AD and tell him I'm coming with, $1 million in NIL money, do you think that's going to help? And that's kind of what guys are focused on.
Business. Yeah.
I'm going this interview. I'm not going to talk about basketball too much. I'm going to say I played in the NBA. I'm going to bring $1 million with me, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And that's one example. But I do think that coaches go into interviews, with, how they're going to raise money. How they're going to, everyone has to hire a general manager now, what ideas they have for hiring a general manager, how they're going to generate revenue. So really, now, especially at the Division I level, like that X's and O's is such a small part. And just going back real quick to what you said about X's and O's, then I say this to a lot of young coaches all the time. Like when you're interviewing for a job, especially as a young assistant, don't tell a guy you're really good with the X's and O's. No one cares. Everyone's good. Like you said, no one cares. What do you do that separates yourself? Are you great with the social media? Do you have these recruiting connections? Did you coach AAU? Like, what are you going to bring to the program that's not X's and O's? Don't right. Please go to a coach and say you got X's and O's, because no one needs that. And even when I was hiring assistants, like I was never the greatest X's and O's guys. I don't care, but I go recruit guys. I'll go get guys, and I want guys that will complement that. Like, so give me a social media guy, give me something. But don't the X's and O's between Division I, Division III. I mean, there's some of these Division III coaches are the best X's and O's guys I've ever seen in my life. So it's an interesting business, man. Interesting business.
Hey, the game has changed, man. But the thing about it is, all games have changed, but you have to be able to evolve with the times, and you got to, and even for Hoop Dirt in any other business, you got to be able to evolve. Yep. Jerry Jones is the only person I've seen who doesn't evolve and can still make a lot of money. But
I don't think those Cowboys are going to be very good, but he's all right. He's making his money. He's fine.
But, man, I don't want to keep you, Adam, man. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Again, as Adam Nelson with hoopdirt.com. This site is the best in the business. And I say that with all humility. Now, when I stumbled across you guys, what you all do, and I'm sure this is only the beginning or maybe the middle, but I'm sure there's a lot of great things to come. But, man, what you guys do is phenomenal. And I'm glad it's profitable, but even more so, it helps a lot of people. In terms of getting visibility to figuring out what's going on, transactions, and getting jobs. So, man, kudos to you, Adam, and thanks for joining.
Listen, I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate you having me on tonight. It was great chopping it up with you for a little bit. And listen, I appreciate everything you guys do too. I follow you guys too. I looked at it today. I follow 58 people on Twitter or X, whatever it is, and I follow you guys. So you guys are one of 50.
Okay.
So
all right. Hey, as